Welcome back, everybody. Hunterace versus Orange is the next quarterfinal of the day. Both went 7-2 throughout Swiss, and we did see them win yesterday. Orange took down Dragon Albert 3-1 yesterday, and Hunterace took down Zenananan 3-1 as well. I got to say that one more time today.
Yeah, you got to squeeze it in there. I didn't think we were going to be able to say that anymore. But
we got there, but so we're in a position where we previously discussed with Lothar as well. Hunterace, quite a young player, quite a new player to the scene. However, Orange, this man is full of experience.
Right, he's definitely in most people's, I'd say, top 10 list for most accomplished players, if not top 5. This guy has been a monster in the competitive scene with a lot of first-place titles. I think he's got up to like 4 or 5 first-place titles, maybe even more. So he's really just been crushing it for a really long time. He had his big break in 2015 and has been keeping up with it ever since then, following in every meta afterwards.
And we can see the bans there. Hunterace's Mage taken away, Orange's Druid taken away, leaving Hunterace with Paladin, Shaman and Druid. And on the other side, Orange, he looked really strong yesterday. Not just through Swiss, but also in the bracket play as well. So let's see whether he's going to be able to carry it on. He is going to be starting it off with his Miracle Rogue as well here.
This is a deck that has all favorable matchups for Orange. His Jade Druid and his Miracle Rogue pretty much had favorable matchups across the board after the ban phase broke down. So it was really difficult for Hunterace to get too effective of a ban here. Miracle Rogue typically super strong against the Jade Druid. So Hunterace, just on lineups alone, is at a huge disadvantage going into this game, but if he can, swing one of these unfavorables, that can all change rather quickly.
And that's the thing with Last Hero Standing. As soon as you have swung one of the unfavorable games, you suddenly can win this series just so fast. And Hunterace does have the tools to be ramping up here. Possibility for Wild Growth and Jade Blossom. Do you innovate out a Jade Blossom? Is that overkill?
Depends if you can get the Aya out. Whatever gets the Aya out the fastest is the way you want to do it. So let's see. If you go with the Innervate out with the Jade Blossom, you're on 3 mana next turn. Then you Wild Growth into Coin Aya. That seems to work quite reasonably. If you go with Coin Wild Growth, then you can follow up with the Jade Blossom. And then you Innervate out the Aya and hang a mana. So either way you do it, it's a bit strange. He's going to go with the Coin Wild Growth. The Jade Blossom is kind of unappealing because you generate a 1/1 that your opponent can then kill. This way you have the opportunity to maybe hold the Innervate if you find something to play on turn 5 or something worth removing with your swipe on turn 3 for you, I guess, for the Druid when he's on 5 mana.
So the difference between these two decks then is typically the Druid very bad at dealing with any big, large threats. There are a lot of big threats that can be in the Miracle Rogue as well. Questing Adventurer, Assassinator Edwin, of course. However, on the other side, the Rogue typically does deal well with big threats, but it only has so many tools to do so. After you've dealt with, what, 3 or 4 Jades, suddenly you're struggling.
Yeah, you can find yourself running into issues if the game goes really long. If the Rogue's unable to string together a way to close the game, can run out of steam by not hitting Gadget, that can be an issue, or just never finding those Giants or the Edwin or the questing to finish things out, then the Jade is able to be ramped up. Or sometimes you can get a really good Yogg off, get a huge board clear, and then, combo swipes and whatnot to kind of exhaust most of the Rogue's threats, but it is going to be very difficult, I'd say, for Hunterace to exhaust the threats of the Rogue. So it's really just about playing as many Jade cards as you can, trying not to fall too far behind, and getting a board that's big enough to answer those big threats when they arrive.
I suppose, what are your thoughts, Fiber, on Yogg-Saron kind of coming back into the meta? Of course, it was very prominent in the meta, somewhat too prominent at one point. It then got nerfed, and now we've seen the inclusion of it in a lot of Jade decks, some Mage decks as well. Is it just having that kind of panic button to use in an extreme situation?
Yeah, it's decks that don't have very good comeback mechanisms, like Druid, for example, kind of need that. And the reason why Druid benefits off of an even board clear more so than a lot of other classes is because you're still invested in the board even if everything is dead, because you've invested in the board in the Jade count. So after the Yogg-Saron kills everything and develops nothing for you, which is one of the expected outcomes, then you can then play your Jade cards out, and they're just better than your opponent's cards, so you pull ahead from that.
Moonfire picked up there as well from Shaku.
In Miracle Rogue.
Yeah, that does help in conjunction with, well, any kind of Edwin play or also the Auctioneer as well. So Orange will be pretty happy about that one.
As well as comboing Vile Spine Slayer. Just comboing anything in general is super nice. But another Jade card picked up from Hunterace. That's what you like to see if you're a Hunterace fan. His Jades are starting to get really out of control. He's ramping them up extremely quickly, I'd say. definitely faster than average for a Druid draw. So if Orange is unable to start getting cards that do stuff, like the Gadgets and Auctioneer, or the Edwin, or the Questing Adventure, he can find himself getting beaten down by these Jades extremely quickly. But Hunterace just taking the time to clean up the board here, and that's probably driven by the fact that he only has the one minion in his hand, so he needs to make these minions go the difference. He favors trading removal for minions rather than just trading minions for minions, because he's got one left.
And Orange can revive Sherazin here if he wants to, but it does feel a little bit awkward. He might actually want to start off with Mimic Pod or even Swashbuckler, see what you find first before you make any sort of decision. Might be a little bit rash. You really want to save some of these coins for Auctioneer. He needs to be picking it up next turn, otherwise his hand's looking pretty messy, to be honest. Needs something big from Swashbuckler. Lotus Agent at least is something. Could coin that out if he would like.
It's not a bad card. Coining it out also seems kind of appealing because you're at least able to continue developing and contesting. You lose a little bit of gadget value, but with your hand as it is, you already have enough, I'd say. So I think it's more just about the tempo. Tempo is so important in this matchup. You have to try and make the Jade Druid play from behind. Otherwise, they can just very comfortably develop their Jade total, and you get in a bad space rather quickly. And since we're committing this many cards, it may even be considered just to drop the Moonfire, just to revive the Sherazin, just in the vein of max tempo is how you win this game.
Obsidian Shard being picked up. I mean, it's not the best weapon, but it can work very well in Miracle Rogue. There is a Harrison Jones in Hunterace's deck, though, so it might actually get some value out of that Shard if it is played at some point.
Yeah, Harrison Jones, a little interesting. A lot of people choose the Ooze rather than the Harrison Jones, but he prioritizes the card draw. It makes it a little bit worse against the aggressive decks, but slightly better against control. Definitely favorable to the Ooze in this matchup in particular.
And we've seen that quite a lot this tournament of players trying to get more card draw from their Jade Druid. We've seen people add Acolyte of Pains, well, Pyromancers. We saw Moonfire plus Acolyte of Pain added by a couple of players as well. Coincidentally, those players aren't in the final 8, but it's still nice to see a little bit of experimentation with these decks.
Sure, a lot of people expected some control decks and teched accordingly. Hunterace definitely aimed this Jade Druid as being a deck that he wants to queue up against control matchups. Now, Orange, he has to figure out how deep he wants to go with this tempo. How much can he sacrifice away from his Gadgets and Auctioneer? Because he definitely does not want to lose too many minions. He also has the consideration of, can he revive Sherazin again this turn, or is that too expensive?
Yeah, everything seems very expensive at this moment for Orange, just because he doesn't have that refill opportunity. Could start off with Mimic Pod, look for something like an Auctioneer, and then that might encourage you to change your play.
He's investing a lot of resources into making this happen here, but picking up the Hallucination isn't too bad. He's going to have fuel beyond this to revive the Sherazin yet again, which is going to be disgusting, as well as also just cheap spells to combo with Gadgets and Auctioneer. So I really like how much he's able to commit to this tempo line while still having the backup plan of the Gadgets and Auctioneer. Sometimes, it's always really tricky to walk that line as carefully as he's doing right now without actually overextending yourself. But Hunterace has drawn almost every Jade card in his deck at this point, besides Jade Idol. So his Jades are ridiculously massive for how early in the game this is.
At least Orange does have an immediate answer with the Slayer, but you're completely right, Firebat. I mean, Orange would just be hoping that these Jades aren't being drawn, but turn after turn, Hunterace has been top-decking them. If there is a situation where he gets low on cards, or if he is out of a board as well, he can follow up with a Yogg and try and answer the board that Orange keeps trying to set here. Has picked up an Ancient of War if you would like it.
The Jades are already so big they contest the Ancient of War with value trades, so it's kind of awkward. He was maybe looking for just raw damage here. At this point, he'd like to start ignoring the board because it's so expensive to try and keep up with the Jades. Even after he removes all of these, if one more Jade card comes down, he could start losing the board. But takes the Lunar Visions, which can draw himself towards his Gadgets and Auctioneer or additional damage. It's going to be tough to find the closing points of damage. He's not running a Cold Blood variant of Miracle Rogue. He's running an Arcane Giant one. So it more heavily relies on board control than the Cold Blood variant. So that's why he's trying to maintain this board still, even after the Jades have been ramped up to this high.
Not giving himself much time. Takes a Naturalize. That is another way of dealing with a a big old Jade, it does provide them with more card draw, but it also could synergize with another Vilespine Slayer as well, and he may be in a position where he's controlling enough of the board that just removing one big Jade might allow him to push enough damage to face to potentially win the game.
Yeah, Hunterace is like really out of options, not picking up another Jade card there. Has slowed down his development a lot. He's got no card draw. If he finds Gadgets and Auctioneer, it doesn't help him, so he really needs to be picking up Nourish.
This Lunar Visions might have to be played as well from Orange. Prep does help with the Lunar Visions.
You could try and prep it out and then have more options of things you could play off the draw, or just playing it so you can save prep for Gadgets and Auctioneer. What minion would he really want to play after he preps it out? The minions do get discounted by it.
Well,
the Arcane Giant would be ideal.
An Auctioneer plus an Eviscerate seems alright. He can't deal with both minions on the board by doing so.
He could use he could go Gadgets and Auctioneer, Naturalize, Edwin Van Cleef, clearing the entire board, reviving Sherazin, playing a Giant Edwin, and cycling some cards along the way.
Yeah, he's sacrificed the fact... Oh, that's a prep as well. So that means you can just Eviscerate this out if you don't want to take the 5 damage. He is giving cards to his opposition, but at this point, he's going to be putting a big old Edwin on the board, as well as reviving the Sherazin. So Orange is posing a threat here. It is a threat that may have to be yogged.
Definitely has to be yogged, yeah. And if this Yogg's able to clear the board, then Hunterace is going to be able to capitalize on the fact that he's invested mana into ramping Jades and likely be in a position to win the game after that. But if the Yogg doesn't clear the board, then obviously he dies. The Edwin hits him in the face.
And this is why Yogg is in the deck for the Druid as well. Needs some sort of board clear, needs to get rid of this big old Edwin. Healing does help. You come onto your own Yogg.
Oh, now the Yogg cannot die. It's pre-nerf Yogg-Saron.
Oh man, that doesn't feel... There we go, it does survive. Card draw's not going to help.
Wow, that's a lot of armor gain. There's a lot of damage coming in, but it is still a nice hefty amount of armor gain and synergizes well with the Gadgets and Auctioneer in his hand. 19, 23, 24, 25, 26.
26 plus 28 with the SI agent.
Wow.
Wants to look for something from the Swashbuckler.
He's going with Fan of Knives first. He has another Eviscerate, right? So he's trying to hit that. Arcane Giant for 0 mana is not bad.
Definitely not bad. I mean, just building up a board presence, and you know that he's already Yogged as well, so there's no way he can answer all these big threats. Yes, okay, the armor gain's there. Jade Idol doing nothing except cycling from the Auctioneer here. Not picking up that Eviscerate though. So he can't finish the game off now, but he may be finishing this game off just by putting this bigger board.
Yeah, it seems pretty tough to beat. Hunterace needs another Yogg.
And it's not like he's even got a big Jade that he can get a ton of armor gain from either until, well, that Jade Blossom came out, but...
Yeah, he can make an 8/8 Jade here, so then he can heal for 9, 10, and then 11. And that's not enough, right? So
yeah, you can put yourself back up to 30, but it's like, it doesn't matter anyway, because you're still dead.
Well, you heal it for 30 and you set up lethal. And then you can also Feral Rage behind that, maybe. 3, 6, 7. Yeah, you can Feral Rage behind that, so you can heal till 30. You can heal for 38 this turn. And 38 plus 9. You had a pretty nice 47. Your opponent has 19, 23, 24, 25. And then the questing's kind of a variable there, but then the 8 after the 25. It's definitely not 47. That's the one thing.
It's about 39 plus the... You can't play the SI agent. You can't play any cards at the moment. It depends what you trade into.
Right. So... Okay. He's going to take out the Gadget for some stability on that. So this lowers the potential damage from the questing adventure and also lowers Orange's ability to refill the hand. But it's only 35 now instead of 47 to life. But you're not encountering 4 from the opposition.
He's just dead. It's the 36 on board, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think that was probably not the way to do that turn to have the most likely chance to win.
Well, Orange is going to take the opening game. Hunterace, unfortunately, didn't generate the armor, which may have kept him alive, but it was still tough anyway.
He probably still would have died.
Yeah, he probably still would have died. So Orange continuing his form from yesterday and can actually continue with his deck as well.
Yeah, and this is going to be tough for Hunterace to beat. Looking at the lineups, Hunterace is all 4 of his decks, except for the Mage, which he was expecting to get banned, are weak to Rogue. But at the same time, all of his decks are kind of weak to Druid as well. So he had to choose one of them to ban. He banned away Orange's Druid to kind of keep that away. And now he has to fear the wrath of the Rogue.
So he's got his Echo Shaman left. I mean,
the Echo Shaman's got somewhat of a chance, right? It's got Halazeal in there. Halazeal in conjunction with Volcano can clear an entire board and heal you for a bunch. His Paladin has some outs as well. If you look at the Paladin deck list, it's not the greatest against Rogue, but sometimes you can find a situation where they don't have a Vilespine Slayer, stick a Ragnaros Lightlord, and outlast the damage from the Rogue. And since Orange is not playing the Cold Blood variant, it can do a little bit worse against Paladin because a lot of the damage relies on board sticking. And Paladin has the equalities which can shut down the Giants, or even just Peacekeepers that can do the same. So Hunterace's plan here is survival. He's not trying to win with damage. He just wants to outlast the threats from Orange.
Yeah, it's whether Orange actually is going to spread out in waves those big minions, as we discussed yesterday. Put out one Giant, force out an Equality, then put out a big old Questing Adventurer, force out another Equality, force out an Outdoor Peacekeeper, for example, and just hope that you can run the Paladin out of resources to deal with those big minions, then drop a load onto the board and say, what are you going to do now, and hope to win the game.
Exactly. So that's why we can see Hunterace here, keeping his removal tools, holding on to Equality off the mulligan, holding on to True Silver. True Silver Champion, by far the best card in the matchup, allows you to respond to a lot of those must-kill threats that Rogue has. You need to kill Questing Adventure when it comes out. You need to kill Gadgetzin when it comes out. True Silver can often deal with both.
And we have seen True Silver kind of dip out. We've seen Rallying Blade come in, and sometimes they just use both. In Hunterace's list, he doesn't actually have Rallying Blade. One of the only Paladin lists I've seen this event that isn't running the Rallying Blade. A lot of people have been at least running one just to try and counter the aggressive form of lineup that we have seen a little bit of, but not much of, to be honest.
Yeah, and that plays to Hunterace's advantage. Rallying Blade is significantly worse against Rogue than True Silver is, just because the breakpoint on a couple of the minions, Gadgetzin Auctioneer and Vilespine Slayer, is pretty important. And the healing helps a little bit. It's a matchup where you don't want to take all that much damage.
I like the fact that Hunterace kept the Equality as well. He knows how important and how scary it could be if there was a big old Edwin built up on turn 1 or 2, for example.
Right. The most important thing, he needs to draw both True Silvers, both Equalities, and ways to activate Equalities, and then both Aldor Peacekeepers. If he does that, that kind of just checks off all of Orange's threats. So Orange could cycle through his deck and do all of his shenanigans, but if Hunterace has all of those cards, he wins the game. So he's trying to just assemble all of those answers, and then Orange's deck really doesn't do anything after that.
And then if Hunterace can answer everything that Orange puts on the board, but then also use things like Stonehill Defender to find more Tyrians, Sunkeeper Tyrims, and then he can really generate his own board, start to push damage into the face of Orange.
Yeah, but you can tell why it's an unfavorable matchup for Paladin, because Hunterace is looking for double Equality, double Activator for Equality, double True Silver, double Peacekeeper. So you're looking at like 8 cards that you need to find in the first half of the game generally. So it's not too often that you're able to do that, which makes Rogue have a bit of an advantage. It gets to just have one of the threats eventually stick a lot of the time.
But we do need to see some form of board built by Orange. At the moment, he's got a whole lot of nothing in his hand.
And that's okay. Paladin isn't going to be pressuring you, so you don't need to rely on tempoing them out. You just need to make sure you develop your threats in places that are awkward for your opponent to deal with. That's the biggest priority. Just make it so they have to expend extra resources to kill your threats and run them out of cards.
It looks like Orange is actually going to pull the trigger on this Questing Adventurer here. Start to make it out of range of the True Silver first. He does have plenty of tools to do so.
Sunkeeper Term's not a bad one.
Huh. Not bad at all. Of course, it doesn't synergize well with some of his own big minions.
But
may work out later.
Well, with some of the small minions. Yeah, the patches there, that's a 3/3 charger now. It's kind of awkward because he wants to be playing the patches this turn to buff the Questing Adventurer out of range, but who knows, maybe it sticks around and you can coin out Sunkeeper Term. How
far does he push this Questing Adventurer? It looks like he's happy with it at a 5/5. doesn't want to put too much resources into it because he knows there are potential clear options for Hunterace. And he's saying, well, I may force out one of your clears with this, and it's not too big a threat. If you want to waste a Consecrate, if you want to waste Inequality, then be my guest.
Yeah, he's definitely not happy to see the Consecrate. He would much rather have to be answered by an Equality or an Aldor to slow it down, but it's not the biggest investment in the world, that's for sure.
So in that case, it could have he made it a 7/7, for example, just to try and put it out of range? Or
that's like way too much investment, because then at that point he's losing the cheap spells that he needs to cycle with Gadget later on. Then he's going to run out of cards, and that'll be a bigger problem.
Might be a Stonehill Defender turn now for Hunterace. Does opt push for the Ivory Knight. Start to get the healing on the go, but also it does immediately challenge the board, so...
No 1-drops in his deck, so small times recruits do basically nothing. Lost in the Jungle creates 2 1/1s, which can work with a Sunkeeper Tarim, potentially. Repentance is the defensive option, and like we've been saying, he's on defense. He's trying to outlast all the threats, so taking removal seems like the clear and obvious choice there.
Yeah, Repentance into something like an Arcane Giant would be fantastic for Hunterace. Onto a Questing wouldn't be great, but onto an Edwin would be decent.
Yeah, so the timing is a little important, but even just playing it on turn 7 to set up for a nice Primordial Drake on turn 8 is not too bad.
Yeah, I don't mind it either. Now, Orange, he's in that same position of, do I need to do anything here? I mean, I can wait. I can play the waiting game all day.
Right, he's trying to develop small minions. Consecrate's already out of the way. If he can force a True Silver charge on a 2/2, he's very happy, because that is not what Hunterace wants his True Silver to be lining up against. And he threatens now the Sunkeeper Tarim, but Hunterace has no idea that that's there, so he may even hold back the True Silver because it's clean for his Primordial Drake, and Rogue doesn't run any health buffs.
So we spoke about how a Hunterace needs to be drawing all his removal, but what is it that Orange needs to be drawing to actually try and win this game? Because
he just needs to cycle into his win condition faster. So he wants to find his Gadget, draw his entire deck by turn 7 or 8, which Rogue has the potential to do when given as much time as it is, and then play out one Arcane Giant, have it get answered, play out the other, have it maybe not get answered, and then if it gets answered, then play out Edwin. But you draw your entire deck and play all your threats before your opponent can assemble all of the removal pieces. So that's where Rogue gets its big advantage, is just the consistency of being able to shred through its deck.
And this is a man, Orange, who took a week off streaming as well. Streaming is something that's very big that he does. He's very important. He lives by it. But he said, actually, I can't afford to stream this week because I need to be focusing on building a last hero standing lineup. It's very different to building a Conquest lineup. Anyone can throw together 4 decks that they think just outright win and are good. But building a last hero standing lineup is very different. You need to be thinking about what you're targeting and what your game plan is.
Right. You can't leave any holes in your lineup, and this Rogue is looking to potentially be a hole in Hunterace's lineup, but he's doing quite well for himself this game, at least at the moment.
I mean, Orange is doing well to answer whatever Hunterace is putting on the board.
Well, yeah, Hunterace isn't trying to put anything all that exciting on the board, though. Control Paladin.
Exactly. I mean, but that's the thing. Orange isn't using much resource to do so.
Okay, sure.
He's just saying, well, I can answer it with just what? A little Razor Petal. Great, okay. And now I've got a 1/4, who cares? Actually going to draw for more. There's one of the Arcane Giants that he needs a little bit later. Orange wants to be able to get a board of just the low-value minions so he can get value out of Sunkeeper Tarim, but to be honest, just as a 3/7, Sunkeeper Tarim might be good.
Well, he assumes that the secret is Repentance now after taking all of these trades, as it were. So, or maybe he doesn't. He definitely does not. The only secrets it could have been at that point were Eye for an Eye or Repentance. That should have been he should have been able to read that was Repentance every time. So that is a huge misstep by Orange there, just giving away a Giant into a Primordial Drake. You can't make those mistakes. Now, Hunterace needs less removal to be able to answer all of the threats from Orange's deck.
And Orange wasn't happy with it. You could see his head was in his hands. He was
Yeah.
Clearly frustrated by that decision. I'm not surprised by that either.
He'd already killed a minion that turn, so he knows it's not Noble Sacrifice. He knows it's not Getaway Kodo or Redemption.
And you don't take the risk that it's just eye for an eye either.
Right. Who would pick eye for an eye? Like, what would justify Hunterace picking eye for an eye in that scenario? So, I guess he just forgot about Repentance.
I mean, I guess he didn't pick it up from just 3 secrets. He did pick it up from an Ivory Knight. So his only choice may have been eye for an eye, for example, from Orange's point of view.
Sure.
He might be saying, okay, maybe he's stuck there, but...
Okay.
It's. I mean, I'm trying to get behind the mind of Orange, but...
It's a fair point. But still, you have to imagine the other 2 random Paladin cards are, generally speaking, going to be better than
eye for an eye.
Than eye for an eye,
Yeah.
right. So there is no sap in the list for Orange. He is going to have to bust through this Tyrion, which means Hunterace is going to get the weapon, which is why he's swinging face here with the True Silver. He's not expecting there to be any taunt or healing from the Rogue deck, and that's 15 points of damage on the Ashbringer, as well as some clear to pave the way for him just to swing face every turn.
Orange does have the option to just take 3 here after playing Tarim, and then maybe prep out and Eviscerate if you would... Well, just play an Eviscerate, sorry, if you would like. And then he's just got some of the board presence. He's wanting to try and get some of that removal from Hunterace. He's also going to generate a card as well from Shaku,
which needs to be some Paladin healing right now. Paladin has a couple of healing options, and that's not one of them. Now the Equality Consecrate can come out, allowing Hunterace to push damage, setting up for lethal for the next turn. Or you can even go with a Wild Pyromancer plus the Stegodon. This also sets up for lethal for the next turn. It's got the Consecrate plus the Ashbringer charge.
And Orange just hasn't been able to draw his Wing Condition. He's not been able to put anything on the board. Hunterace has had the answers to all the little pesky minions, and now Hunterace can finally play the aggressor as well.
Orange has really been lacking gadgets in Auctioneer. He's about over halfway through his deck with no gadgets in Auctioneer drawn. His hand just kind of fizzled out. Sometimes that can happen with Rogue, which is why when Hunterace's lineup was pretty bad against Rogue and Druid, decided to ban the Druid because it's just a more consistent deck overall. And if you're going to be bad to something, might as well be bad to something that sometimes doesn't draw a gadget.
So actually a really important win for Hunterace in this series, being able to topple the Rogue. There's that second Arcane Giant. And there's no kind of cold blood combo with the Primal Fin champion there that could have been crazy in some other world, but instead it's going to be 1-1 now. Orange won't be able to use the Rogue, which is going to leave him
with the Shaman.
Yeah, with the Shaman as a possibility, or his N'Zoth Paladin.
Right. So I do not expect the Control Paladin mirror to start coming out. I'd say he's probably a slight favorite in the Paladin mirror because he does have the N'Zoth package. Shaman, though, is just the go-to counter against Paladin a lot of the time. But looking at the matchups, Hunterace has his Echo Shaman remaining after this. So you have to think as Orange, what deck lines up better against that? Maybe the fact that the Paladin just struggles so much against the Echo Shaman that's going to be remaining afterwards. You play the Paladin first so you don't risk losing your Shaman here. And then, you know, even though you only have a slight edge here, you definitely are at a huge disadvantage if you have to play the Paladin against the Shaman. So, yeah, it looks like that's what he's going to do. That's why he's queuing the Shaman, or the Paladin mirror.
So it's the N'Zoth variant. It's got Rallying Blade in as well for Orange. So a little bit more late game steam. But it is the Control variant that he's going up against Hunterace. I mean, any particular favorites that you'd have for this matchup, Firebat? Is there anything you've played previously or learnt from watching these guys over the course of this tournament?
Well, the thing about Control mirrors is the greedier the deck, the more likely you are to win the matchup, because both decks go extremely slow. They kind of trade resources against one another. They both clear the board multiple times. But the guy that's left with a threat at the end of the day is going to be the guy that walks away happy. And having Karen Bloodhoof and N'Zoth in Orange's deck, whereas Hunterace doesn't have either of those cards, and rather instead has Ivory Knight and Primordial Drake, it's going to be a little bit easier for Orange having additional threats. By no means is it like a clear favorite, because you can still just get tempoed out or have to use your clears inefficiently.
Because it's all well and good Hunterace healing himself back up, but if Orange can play the value game, get his death rattles out, I think he's got Infested Tauren in there as well, and just put a big threat on the board after he's already pulled those equalities from Hunterace, then yeah, maybe this is a good chance for Orange. He's got the Hydrologist out early as well. He's found a little bit of his early game, but Hunterace can respond with some of his own. Do you take Noble Sack?
All of these are the secrets you do not want to see. Noble Sacrifice gives the most tempo. In the immediate, Repentance can be used later on to try and stop big minions from coming down. Eye for an Eye is useless. You may take Noble Sacrifice, you may take Repentance. I'm not really clear which one is strictly better. You're going to be resetting the board with Doomsayers a lot, it looks like, looking at Hunterace's hand. And since Noble Sacrifice is better in the early game and Repentance is often better in the late game when your opponent's trying to play big minions, since the early game is just going to be Doomsayers clearing the board over and over again, I imagine that's why he decided on the Repentance.
And the players do have the advantage of open deck lists, so they will know that the likes of Doomsayers are available and they can play around a lot more. When it's closed deck lists, you don't really know what you're facing up against, and your place is slightly altered in closed deck lists. And actually, we'll see plays maybe done a little bit quicker sometimes in open deck lists, because they'll have more of an idea about what the things they have to play around are.
Let me think.
So I guess you could just Doomsayer here as Hunterace. It seems pretty... maybe a waste?
Right, you're trading Doomsayer for a 2-2 and gaining the tempo, but then you have no way to capitalize off the tempo, which can make it a bit of a crummy play. Waiting a little bit longer on the Doomsayer, though, you run into the issue where Orange could have the Stampede and Kodo and just push a really big board extremely quickly.
And to be honest, these turns somewhat play themselves, the early turns in the Control Paladin matchup. The interesting factor is going to be the middle game, when we start to see real decisions being made of how you're going to try and swing the tempo in your favor. Are you worrying about equality, Pyromancer, for example? You don't want to commit too much to the board. Depends how much of a read you have on your opponent and what you think they've been holding in their hand as well. It's a Doomsayer for Orange.
Yeah, it's hard to get a read, as you said, right now. Not too much information being shared. Orange is going to start seeing that Hunterace's hand is really slow, especially after he doesn't capitalize on an open board tempo. Then you can kind of eliminate all of the cards that you would just be able to develop on a naked board from being in his hand.
And how much research do you think a player does? So after yesterday, we obviously went through and we got to the last 16. We got to this top 8 format. Do players just go home, go to bed, rest? Or would you go back and research your opponent, watch back VODs, write down kind of the plays and try and get a decent read on them overnight?
I don't think you can analyze someone's play tendencies overnight very accurately, but I think the most important thing once the deck lists get public for top 16 is you have to go home and memorize them, because oftentimes the tournaments, they don't let you bring a copy of the deck list in even when they're public.
Oh.
So public deck list does not mean you get to actually have a copy in your hand a lot of the time. So you have to go home and memorize that rather quickly.
Usually you can have like a little notepad, right? So you could write down key cards.
Well, you can't bring any paper with any writing on it into the actual play area.
You can only bring a blank page.
You bring a blank page, but you have key tech cards memorized before that, and you write them down. So oftentimes at the start of a match, you'll see players panically writing down a whole bunch of stuff so they don't forget them right before the game. Because once the stress starts happening and you start getting involved with every single turn, it can get very easy to forget unique cards.
That's a really good insight, actually, because, I mean, typically people would think that they've just got the deck list in front of them, and when you're saying, oh, they should know that this card's in it, they've seen the open deck list, memorizing 4 decks, I mean, that's not the easiest thing in the world.
Well, it's easier than making it to this point in the tournament, so...
apart from a world champ, I mean, I'm sure you can memorize it easily.
If you're flying to Sweden to compete in a major for loads of money and, you know, respect from your peers, then you better well have enough time to invest in memorizing the deck list.
Definitely do have to put the time and effort in. Can't afford to be lazy in these situations. Orange finding another possible Tyrion as well from the Stonehill defender if he would like it.
It's pretty good when you run a N'Zoth in your deck. So then that means later on in the game, his N'Zoth is going to be able to bring back 2 Tyrions. I imagine he's taking a lot of time here and just try to pretend it's not Tyrion. Because now Hunterace, he may not assume it's Tyrion. If you snap pick it rather quickly, they can kind of get a read that it may be a Tyrion.
That's a really interesting point as well. Something that kind of gets brushed under the carpet by a lot of maybe more casual Hearthstone players. You don't think about some of the possibilities of trying to outwit your opponent just by taking your time over things. It's why we've seen in past like a turn 1 or turn 2 roping. When there is a clear, definite just hero power and pass play, you make your opponent think that there is something else in your hand.
Yeah. This is super awkward for Hunterace. He's actually quite far behind on board, as weird as that sounds. You know, he's staring down a 1/4 and a 2/2, but
he's just got a whole lot of answers in his hand, and none of these answers really respond to low-end minions.
He just has a lot of big threats. He's got 3 8-drops in his hand that he can't play. The Sunkeeper Terram, of course, is an answer he can't play. Doomsayer, he could try and play for gaining the tempo, but then he has no way to initiate on it after it goes off. And it's not that likely to go off with the board having 6 damage available.
Hunterace is actually more interesting looking for the golden beetroot as well.
Yeah, well...
Didn't you find it the other day, or the other week, the other month?
Yeah, like last month I found it. It was my first one that I had found in a year, the golden vegetable.
I didn't even know it was possible until I saw that tweet.
Okay, yeah, it's possible.
So now I've been searching ever since.
It takes a long time. They're very few and far between. I've had 3 in my entire history playing Hearthstone.
Wow.
I've been playing the game for forever, basically, and yeah, that is one elusive golden beet.
One day. One day I'll be world champion, one day I'll find a golden vegetable.
That'd be pretty cool to find it on stream.
That would be really cool,
that's
actually.
That's what Hunterace, I think, is going for.
Yeah, wants to be that man.
Yeah. This Doomsayer can't really be efficiently answered by Orange.
And this is typically how Control Paladin matchups do go, where you just play Doomsayers, you play your removal, and you just wait until you can put the big threats on the board. There's no Tarim for Orange to answer this Doomsayer, and instead it's just going to toss away one of his own Doomsayers just to get rid of the Repentance. Knows it's a Repentance this game.
Yeah, he's got it on the mind now for sure, so he takes the trade with the Stonehill Defender to try and check and see if the secret is Noble Sacrifice, Getaway Kodo, or Redemption. Probably should have went face with the 2/2 first to check for eye for an eye, and then confirm 100% that it is the Repentance, and then play the Doomsayer. So a little sequencing, but you know, it all works out at the end of the day.
So for Hunterace now, is the... Oh, okay, yeah, that changes things.
Yeah, you see him perk up there in his chair, Hunterace, maybe giving away a little tells. They are sitting across from each other. When your opponent is leaning really far back and then jumps forward when they draw a card, you can assume it's a good card, but the read doesn't help Orange as he's playing it anyway. But yeah, fantastic for this matchup. Just the amount of value you get off Curator. You draw 3 cards, and they're all pretty good cards for the matchup as well. So 7 mana, draw 3, play a 4/6 is absolutely disgusting in a grindy value game.
I guess the read that Orange could have made from that for Hunterace just quickly, promptly shuffling up his chair is saying, okay, the rest of his hand is probably big old things. He's probably got a Tyrion in there, probably got the Ragnaros.
Yeah, the Tyrion and the Ragnaros been there since basically the opening hand of Hunterace, so you have to assume that those are most likely 8-drops. And most of the cards have just really been sitting there in his hand. He hasn't had any proactive plays, so you can start eliminating most of the proactive minions from being a potential there. But yeah, you're right. If you see your opponent jump up, that means they had garbage to play and they finally found something to do.
You really do have to pay attention in these games as well. I mean, it's all well and good Hunterace just, clicking the vegetables and, like, kind of dossing around a little bit at first. But now you've got to start looking at your opposition hand, start to try and gain some sort of read, work out what they're going to be playing, thinking about your game plan of how you're going to win as well. Think a few turns ahead. Think 10 turns ahead if you can.
Good luck.
Yeah, exactly.
It's Hunterace is the deck that has less value in it, so it's going to be much trickier for him to potentially win this game. He has the out or the game plan of trying to smork down his opponent and out-tempo them, but the window for that is kind of came and went. He didn't have a hand that could really do that when drawing all of his 8-drops. So now he has to try and line up threats and maybe try and win in fatigue, exhausting his opponent.
Which is going to be difficult.
Yeah.
Against N'Zoth variant from Orange.
Yeah.
Hunterace has picked up the getaway Kodo. Maybe synergize that with a Tyrion, and he might be able to get 2 Tyrions of his own. But certainly with a secret up after a Tyrion be played, Orange will have a very good idea of what that secret will be and maybe reluctant to kill it off.
Yeah, there usually gets to be that point in these matchups where both players have Tyrion plus a secret remaining, and neither wants to kill the Tyrion. It bounces back and forth for a really long time, a lot of doing nothing.
Orange using his weapon to trade efficiently there, and with the Drake, puts him back in control of the board. Hunterace was already behind. He would have been even further behind if he hadn't have picked up that Curator a little bit sooner, actually.
Opens up for a pretty good Sunkeeper Tarim turn if he wants to take it. Also a not bad Rag Light Lord to try and contest. The fear is like an Aldor Kodo combo being able to come out from Orange, but...
Yeah, I really like just Hero Power and Sunkeeper Tarim.
Yeah, it's not too bad. It keeps you ahead, but it's not the juiciest Tarim in the world.
Are you going to get any juicier, though?
Yeah.
You think?
Yeah, definitely. You can slow down the game a lot. Your opponent can't really commit too much as long as they know it's there, so slowing down the pace of the game is valuable, depending on what the card counts are and depending on what your game plan is. If you're trying to tempo your opponent out, is that enough of a tempo swing? He's got 15 cards remaining. And if you're trying to exhaust all your opponent's resources, I don't think Sunkeeper Tarim trading for Primordial Drake is good enough. So I think the Sunkeeper Tarim is the best play on the turn, but it's still very questionable. That's why he's roping on it, because is it enough to actually win you the game? Because this is the most important card in your deck. This is the card that offers the biggest tempo swings and the biggest value swings. And he's really trading it. You know, he's getting a 2-for-1 still, but not by much.
I guess the Spike Ridge Steed is important as well in both decks, trying to put that onto a minion at some point, and it might encourage out one of those equalities, perhaps, if it's too beefy a minion to just deal with weapon and what's on the board, and then you can follow it up with something like a Tyrion and get even more value out of it without them being able to remove easily. First Tyrion played then. It could be the first of many in this game, as he so often does turn up.
Hunterace has a Harrison Jones in his Paladin deck, so he has some weapon removal. The weapon removal gives him draw, which will open up the win condition of Orange for fatigue. So it's kind of a double-edged sword for this matchup. Oftentimes you'd prefer the Gluttonous Ooze so that you don't actually draw the cards, so you can leave the window open to kind of play the game the other way as well. But sick Getaway Kodo here. Lining up either target with Getaway Kodo is fantastic.
Yeah, he'll certainly be happy with either. I wonder whether that will make Orange potentially not kill one of these. It might be too much of a threatening board to even consider that.
You know, one of the things he could do, maybe try and get some Spike Ridge Steed value here and just like poking the bubble off the Tyrion. It's got... The problem is that Divine Shield trades super favorably, so you want to do something about that Divine Shield if you can.
So what, by Pyromancer into Steed, are you thinking? It's not great, but...
Okay. That's your only equality activator, so that's the scary part with that line. But I can see it.
I may have to go for it here, just so he doesn't give away an easy getaway Kodo yet.
And just so the Divine Shield doesn't get that extreme amount of value. Okay.
All right, interesting. He's putting it onto the Pyromancer rather than Tyrion here. And he will give away another Tarim to Hunterace, but I guess he's not too concerned about that. He'd rather do that than give another Tyrion, I suppose.
He's got 3 minions extended, so he doesn't feel bad if Tarim comes back down. But yeah, usually in those situations, you just hold the attack and don't let them have the value. So Orange is saying, my deck has so much value, I can beat an additional Sunkeeper Tarim. And I think that decision is weighted by the fact that he has this additional Tyrion in his hand. If he didn't have the additional Tyrion in his hand, he might try and slow this game down a little bit more. But he says, you know what? Extra Sunkeeper Tarim does not beat my additional Tyrion and my N'Zoth package, so I'm just going to plow through and force you to keep answering stuff.
Both players with a Shaman remaining as well. I mean, do you think we're in a position where whoever wins this may go on to win the Series 3 win? Of course, it is a different Shaman for both players. It's Evolve Shaman for Orange, and it's the Echo Shaman for Hunterace. If Hunterace was to lose this one, could you see Orange go on to take it 3-1 with his N'Zoth variant against the Echo Shaman?
Most likely not. I'd say most likely the Shaman wins, and then we go down to the Shaman mirror at the very last end of it, and then Hunterace is going to be slightly favored in the Shaman mirror. So I would say Orange is at a disadvantage in the series, but an advantage in this game.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of weird how these lineups pan out like that. Losing with that rogue really hurt Orange.
I guess the devolves are going to be very important factors in the Shaman mirror as well. Hunterace is running them in his Echo Shaman, but it's going to be whether Orange can get them down when an Echo is put onto the board. But that will remain to be seen, and we'll get into that when that game perhaps does come forth. And the second Tyrion is not greeted well by Hunterace.
Yeah, with the secret as well. Yeah, he's got that Harrison
okay.
Jones. Harrison Jones is a commitment into the aggressive line, which doesn't seem all that bad for Hunterace, as Orange is at 16 life. So you get a bunch of tempo out of it. You want to kill the Tyrion first before playing the Harrison Jones, so the first Ashbringer overwrites, or the second Ashbringer overwrites the first Ashbringer, and you leave them with none of them, but it's a bit awkward to do right now. But yeah, then he's going to be in a position where he will be losing in fatigue by a significant margin, and all Orange has to do is answer all of the threats that Hunterace has. So, but he needs to set up a situation, if Orange doesn't extend onto this board, where he can kill the Tyrion twice in one turn and then overwrite the Ashbringer. Either that, or he needs to kill whatever else Orange chooses to play onto the field.
Primordial Drake is such an awkward minion to deal with as well. The 4-8 body is so sticky and really frustrating to play up against. I mean, not just for Paladin, but for other classes as well. It just sits there. It's been actually one of the biggest cards to come out from Un'Goro in terms of adding to the control meta.
Right. It's so crazy powerful against aggro, and it's really allowed a lot of decks to excel. Jade Druid in particular got a huge power spike with Primordial Drake. So developing this is going to allow the redemption to be broken, because Orange has redemption up right now, which is what makes this tiering so threatening. But the Stonehill Defender added to the board, that's a minion that can be traded into first.
Of course, Orange does know that Hunterace has another Sunkeeper Tyrant as well available, so he wants to keep his board relatively wide.
Sure, that makes sense. So he's not really prioritizing getting too much value out of this redemption. He's really focusing on the tempo. So yeah, he's playing the greedier deck, and he's taking all tempo lines with it, saying, I don't need to play for too much value. I can force Hunterace into bad positions because my deck naturally has more value than his, and at the end of the day, I'll come out on top.
I was just looking to see how much Hunterace, how much damage he could actually push to the face of Orange this turn if he wanted. It doesn't look like he's going that route.
Yeah, if he were to clear with the equality.
Yeah. But no, he's going to get that value from Harrison Jones. I think Orange would have been well aware this is a possibility because of the open deck list, of course. But you're completely right, Firebat. That does mean, in terms of the late game, in terms of the fatigue possibility, Orange is now wearing the trousers.
But in terms of tempo and in terms of card advantage, Hunterace has the pants. So it's two different angles that they're taking, and it's what happens when one control deck has slightly less value than the other. Is he going to jam the Kodo to the face? Take the value trade in the 1/1, helps against Sunkeeper Tarim a little bit better.
Push the damage to face it. He didn't look like he was sure on it either.
Right, it's a tough decision. He doesn't have very much damage left in his deck. Hunterace has these Ashbringer charges, he's got these True Silver charges, and that's about it, really. His next threat is Ragnaros Lightlord, which you can assume at this point Orange is going to have an answer for. So connecting too much more damage is quite difficult. He has the Ivory Knight in his deck, so he can try and find more damage off the Ivory Knight. But he has to close this game out before it goes to the ultimate endgame of fatigue.
I keep seeing in the camera as well, Hunterace keeps looking above his computer screen, giving Orange the eyes almost. Is that something that happens a lot? I mean, you've been in this position several times, Firebat. Do you ever use your advantage of being across from an opposition to try and somewhat intimidate them or even get a read from them?
Yeah, you definitely try and read what they're doing. Staring them down and stuff like that usually doesn't intimidate people. For some reason, it makes them more focused. If they're a nervous player, the best thing to do, I think, is just to completely ignore them. And they just get anxiety and start destroying themselves. Where if you were to like just stare down a nervous player, suddenly they start to zone in a little bit more and focus more. So it's kind of interesting like that. But usually if a player's staring at me a lot, I assume they're pretty nervous. And it's usually correct, so then I usually try and ignore them a little bit. So if Hunterace was giving me the eyes like that all game, then I would not glare back at him.
So we got a Stonehill Defender that was burned for Hunterace, which is, I guess, not great with the value that you can get from a Stonehill Defender.
Yeah, not great is a good way to put it. It is, it is really bad to burn a Stonehill Defender. We were talking how Hunterace doesn't have too many threats left in his deck. The Stonehill Defender is kind of a threat. Sometimes it's Tyrion, and in those instances it is a threat. So burning that is pretty expensive there.
Let me think.
And the grimace across Hunterace's face as well when he didn't discover a Tyrion. That's the position you're in now with Stonehill Defender, is you're expecting to find either a Tyrion or a Sunkeeper Tarim. It is at that point, it is highly likely. But it will be the Wicker Flame in the end that has to be taken. Thankfully, he has the answers. Of course he does. Both players have several answers in their hand to deal with any big threats. He is still keeping with the tempo.
Yeah, he has to pressure. He's trying to do his best at it. Unfortunately for him, he had to discard a lot of damage there because he wasn't able to hold back a Kodo for the Aldor-Kodo combo. So even though you are able to neutralize the damage from the Ragnaros Lightlord and kill it off that turn, you have to sink an Ashbringer charge into it. So it's one of the most expensive ways to have to answer it, and you don't really have too much damage to play with.
So Orange likely uses Kodo here as well as the True Silver just to clean up most of this board, leave the Aldor Peacekeeper just sitting there and at least contest it with his 3/5 Kodo. Wicker Flame not going to get any sort of healing value. There's the Ivory Knight, the second Ivory Knight. Was that the first Ivory Knight for Hunterace? I think that's the first one he's seen.
There's only one Ivory Knight in his deck list, so it is the first and the last. Unless he discovers a Light in the Darkness, which then discovers another Ivory Knight.
You saying it's the last night?
Yeah,
Let me think.
most of the time. If he plays it, then we'll know for sure. Right now, there's still a possibility of a second, a third, a fourth, and a fifth Knight. And a sixth. And a seventh. But yeah, Hunterace taking the most aggressive play he can on the board.
And now we start to see some of the more death rattles as well from Orange. Actually important he is drawing these death rattles before he draws N'Zoth. Because if he were to draw N'Zoth, he might be tempted just to jam it onto the board because he's already seen 2 Tyrions die. He can get even more value from playing these Taurens now, early on.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the card counts are exactly, but Orange feeling the exhaustion of his hand right now. He has no way to combo this equality. He needs more answers to the threats Hunterace is proposing, so Acolyte of Pain's a good way to cycle towards it. And I believe Hunterace is still like 4 or 5 cards ahead of Orange, so drawing 1 or 2 won't really change anything.
I don't think Orange will mind too much. As you said, like, the fact he had to use the Kodo earlier without the Peacekeeper just means that Peacekeeper's probably going to be used just to stem some damage a little bit later on from an 8/8, for example. What could Hunterace pick up from Ivory Knight that could be of significance then?
Anything big. Dino size. Lay on Hands is not great with 5 cards in your deck. It is big, though.
Yeah.
Honestly, the healing for 8 may be worth more than what the secrets accomplish for 1. So I honestly don't really hate the Lay on Hands pick.
Or just picking it and then just leaving it in your hand and never playing it.
It also threatens Dino size, which is really fun. Because now Orange would have to play around Dino size, but he goes with the Noble Sacrifice. It has the most, I'd say, utility throughout the match, but I'd say less value. Healing for 8 is worth more than healing for 1 and having a Noble Sacrifice, I'd say.
There is the wombo combo with the equality then in the Pyromancer, and maybe forced to use it here, Orange, because he was actually staring down a board with...
This is the interesting thing, right? It's if Hunterace had taken the 8-mana card,
yep.
The only other 8-mana card is Dino Size. So Orange would have to equality clear this out of fear of getting Dino Size to death, which is actually, I find that hilarious. But
you're an evil man.
It's whatever.
But it's true, yeah. If you can get an edge over your opponent in any way without even playing a card,
right,
then go for it. But Hunterace obviously clearly feels that the tempo of a Noble Sacrifice is more likely than Orange misplaying around the Dino.
Well, it's not even a misplay. It's a 50-50 for it to be Dino. Yeah. So he has to, run the odds in his head, and then maybe has to clear too early, which gives you an opportunity to make stuff happen. Orange 8 cards remaining, so he can still draw pretty comfortably with this Acolyte of Pain.
And the Spike Ridge Steed is going to help push a little bit more damage for Hunterace as well.
The last push for Hunterace, basically. This is the second Spike Ridge Steed, the final Sunkeeper Tarim, the last Primordial Drake, and then, of course, the only Raglite Lord, but also the last Raglite Lord. So this is it. This is the gas in his entire deck, all in his hand. He needs to make this 13 points of damage happen. He knows there's potentially an equality combo in hand, or at least an equality, or at least a Pyromancer, because Orange has been sitting there with that equality for ages now. And here goes the push.
Important for Hunterace is that he has equality Pyromancer himself for when that possible N'Zoth comes down as well, summoning those 2 Tyrians. Does need another spell as well, and the guest, that may be another reason for picking up the Noble Sacrifice. It can help get rid of those Divine Shields of the Tyrians.
Sure. It's not too bad. It can also just stop an Ashbringer from hitting you in the face, which is pretty fantastic sometimes. Sunkeeper Tarim puts in a lot of work here, and so does equality.
I think I like Tarim here. The fact you can hero power first as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your 3/7 is contesting down. Well, you get a 3/7 and then 2 3/1s against 2 3/3s after the trades kind of break down, because you have to get through the 2/6 taunt, which makes it a little awkward. Opens yourself up to being kind of punished by a Consecrate or a Wild Pyromancer plus a spell, with the knowledge that Hunterace has a 1-mana card in his hand discovered off Ivory Knight. I think the Sunkeeper Tarim is less appealing because he has the ability to Wild Pyromancer Noble Sacrifice. But yeah, he debated a long time between the two and is going to go for it. He only wanted 1 draw off the Acolyte of Pain. He could have chosen to take 2, but does not want to be dying in fatigue. But yeah, Wild Pyromancer plus Noble Sacrifice here is fantastic for helping Hunterace clean up the board.
Is there any way for lethal for Hunterace here? Equality, run the True Silver in, and you put 6 to face. Equality into Pyromancer, into Noble Sacrifice, kills off the opponent's board, and then you play True Silver?
Well, it kills your board as well.
Yeah, that doesn't work. There's no way of getting through the 3/7 without killing off your own board. So close.
I wonder.
You could send 7.
7's not bad. It's not quite lethal. You also have a lot of value on this turn with like Primordial Drake as well. Sunkeeper Tarim, not the highest value here, but he is going to be pushing as much damage as he possibly can, trying to set up lethal for the next turn. Orange has some healing outs, Forbidden Healing, namely the one he's probably looking for the most, as well as 2 Spike Ridge Steeds for taunts. Ragnar's Lightlord has already been played by Orange, right?
I believe so.
So that's it.
Doomsayer is not it. So he can Equality Pyromancer, he can Consecrate, he can get rid of this board, but...
Yeah, the final push from Hunterace is able to do it. Orange doesn't have any taunts or any healing there. He needed either N'Zoth or... no, the N'Zoth doesn't quite work because of the secret taken by Hunterace.
Yeah, and I think maybe he had thought ahead there.
Right.
I know we were thinking about the Dino Size, and again, that would have been an interesting option, but I really think he was thinking ahead about N'Zoth, and now he goes 2-1 up, and we're left with Orange and his Evolve Shaman. Evolve Shaman has done very well in this tournament, But, yes, okay, it's going up against Control Paladin now. It's going to be that final match if Orange is able to take this next one against an Echo Shaman. I don't know, that seems a little bit of a struggle. It does seem like Orange is definitely on the back foot now, and it may just come down to losing that rogue game earlier. Yeah,
that's the most expensive game there. But yeah, I want to talk again about the Noble Sacrifice. Like you said, it allows him to go Wild Pyromancer, Noble Sacrifice, remove the Divine Shields from the Tyrion in equality. I didn't catch that at first glance, and he was setting up for that, you know, miles in advance. It was very well played.
And Hunterace, just 16 years old as well.
Yeah,
I mean,
the young prodigy.
Yeah.
He's like an amnesiac. Hopefully not as cocky on Twitter, but, you know. So the Evolved Shaman typically favored against the Control Paladin, just because it has such great tools to be able to answer the Paladin's threats with the Devolve, as well as just great offensive power. The Bloodlust's always threatening, so it just makes anything that the Shaman does very threatening. And the Paladin, although it does have some clears, it can't just clear forever. And it doesn't have great minions that it can develop to be able to contest the board with just minions, so it really gets punished by totems, which offer lots of benefits if you can't remove them.
Really funny you brought up Twitter as well. I believe it's actually Amnesiac who replied to Orange's tweet today when Orange said, "Oh, playing Hunterace for top 4 today." And I think Amnesiac said something like, "Oh, great, I've been waiting for Hunterace's claim to fame." Basically saying like Orange was going to lose.
Oh, man.
Trying to get into Orange's head a little bit. I think he's not even at this tournament.
He's a savage all the time. It's something that happens with those young players. They get really aggressive on the social media, so it'll be interesting if you know, Hunterace takes this whole tournament, what kind of personality he chooses to be. Is he maybe going to be the one modest 16-year-old prodigy?
There's got to be one out there somewhere, surely.
I don't think so. No? I don't think so. I don't think there's any high-level competing 16-year-old players that are modest on Twitter. Not a one.
I can't think of any.
I can't, yeah. It's... So, we'll have to see. Maybe Hunterace will be the first. But first, he still has to win this.
Yeah, he still has to get there. Still has to get past the roadblock that is Orange, but he's set himself in a good position with the remaining decks available to him, being Echo Shaman. But then it's not to say that the Evolved Shaman can't push through an Echo Shaman a little bit later on. And
it can definitely tempo out an Echo Shaman. You know, if the Echo Shaman doesn't draw the volcanoes, it can find itself in a world of hurt real quick.
And we say that like the Paladin can't win this game, but we know the Paladin can win this game.
I can see the hand. It's going to be tough.
It is going to be tough. I mean, yes,
That's
okay, there is removal from Hunterace, but you're completely right. You do run out of removal at some point. How many tools have you got? So you've got Pyromancer and Equality ×2. You've got 2 more Consecrations that could be some form of removal.
He's got 2 Primordial Drakes, which are helpful, albeit a little bit too slow most of the time, but it's definitely not too bad. It's just, you can't afford to use your board clears on these small boards, and these small boards oftentimes will really beat you up. You can see just how much value Orange is getting off this Mana Tide, and it just keeps drawing him in additional cards over and over again. Hunterace praying that this Kodo is going to be able to remove that Mana Tide. That would be a big way for him to get rid of it without having to expend any of his important resources. No.
Not today, unfortunately, for Hunterace. And just looking at this hand from Orange now, it is absolutely massive. He should be able to start running away with it. He's also got the turn 6 play of Doppelgangster into Evolve. He can then play Thing from Below and then Evolve again the next turn.
Yeah, whenever he sees an Equality come out, he's just going to be able to immediately go Doppelgangster Evolve, and that is going to be brutal. So he's got decent ways to trade up here, decent ways to protect. He wants to make sure that there's always a taunt in the way, stopping a weapon from being able to kill his Mana Tide if possible. So I kind of favor the Flame Tongue Thing from Below turn. You could also take a weaker line of play that saves the Flame Tongue with the Jade Lightning, trade in the 1/1. Most important thing is whatever you do here, you want the Mana Tide alive and you want a taunt protecting it from a weapon. Everything else is just depends how much you want to invest in the board, and Orange chooses to invest as little as possible into this board.
So for Hunterace to actually... Ooh, hello, Doomsayer. I guess that's one way of potentially clearing a board. I mean, he doesn't know that there's a Flame Tongue Totem in the hand of Orange, but...
And there's always the fear of the devolve on the Doomsayer can be pretty good.
If Hunterace were to just draw all of his removals turn after turn, is there a way that he can get ahead at any point in this game?
Eventually, Orange has to run out of stuff, right? So I'm sure he needs both Primordial Drakes. That would be a really great start to getting ahead. This Doomsayer going off would be a fantastic way to pull ahead as well.
No Devolve to deal with it. Does have a Jade Claws and Flame Tongue Totem, however. So does have the means to get through it regardless of the secret. Hunterace is getting a little bit fidgety now.
You can't even look for the golden beat.
I asked this question to Lorinda yesterday. I said, what do you think is the most clicked object in Hearthstone?
The vegetables, yeah.
You think?
Yeah, everybody looks for the golden beat.
But I didn't even know that was a thing until you posted it on Twitter. It's gone under my radar completely.
It's an important thing. And it would honestly improve your Hearthstone skills to get some golden beats. I think it really does just level up your RNG.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lesson learned for everyone at home as well then.
Search for them golden beats.
And thankfully, Orange can deal with that Doomsayer. It does mean Hunterace gets it back, but yeah, this board's starting to look a little bit tricky, and there's no actual activator for the equality at the moment either.
He's going with the Evolve here.
Wow, okay. That confused Hunterace as well.
Yeah, it seems kind of odd. But if you get the equality clear out of the way here, then that means you are free to go with Doppelgangster Evolve. So just pushing the envelope, forcing your opponent to have to deal with something a bit bigger. And then you can free up your ability to do other stuff, because Orange has enough resources to create 3 waves of threats, right? He has this wave of a threat, it needs to get answered by equality. He goes Doppelgangster Evolve, that needs to be answered by equality. And he gets 2 Thing from Blows out there, and that needs to be answered by equality. So, with having 3 waves of threats, I really like this by Orange, because Hunterace can't deal with 3 waves of threats. And one of the ways you can lose is by being too patient as the Shaman. So Orange is just really giving Hunterace the business. And he's got some minions here that scale really nicely as well. The Backroom Brawler gaining attack, and the Ghoul.
Flesh-eating Ghoul, yeah, like that'll gain 1 attack every time something dies. You've also got the Legendary that initiates death rattles as well when you put them on the board. So depending on what Hunterace plops onto this board, Orange might be able to trade efficiently, get some sheer value out of just plus attack, but then also put an Aya onto the board if he wanted to as well.
The Flesh-eating Ghoul is growing, and he gets the Aya synergy. It's fantastic. He's got 5 minions on board, so he needs to get rid of 1, and then he can drop the Aya and get the double value. He's got Bloodlust now, though.
Which does just give him lethal, right?
13
He's got patches as well,
15.
so yeah. Just straight up lethal. Orange should be able to take this one and make it 2-2. He is just double checking it and counting it. I don't think he even needed patches, actually.
He didn't even need patches. He's got overkill. And that'll do it. That is why that matchup is very tricky for Control Paladin. It just can't respond fast enough to the big boards. And even if it does, you're not usually killing anything important. Just a bunch of totems, and then your opponent can reflood again and again and again. And you just don't have enough ways to keep up while answering it.
Well, speaking of answering the big boards, can Hunterace's Echo Shaman answer them? He does have 2 Volcanoes in that deck. He's got Maelstrom Portals, no Lightning Storm.
Right, the no Lightning Storm makes it a bit harder, but having the Volcanoes is fantastic. He really needs to fight Volcanoes. Having Lightning Bolts, not too bad as well. Sometimes people play 2 Jade Chieftain. He has 1 Jade Chieftain, 1 Lightning Bolt, so that you can kind of answer Manatide Totems, Flame Tongue Totems, Primal Fin Totems. Just all of the totems are able to be answered, even behind a Taunt, which can open up ways for you to slow down the board a lot.
Looks like Hunterace considering keeping the Volcano here. I don't blame him for that situation.
Every time you want to keep that Volcano. That is the card of the matchup. Orange needs to be able to navigate around it effectively enough to where he commits enough to force Hunterace to have to use it, but doesn't commit too much to where he can't reload after the fact. So it's a tricky place to be.
Yeah, because Hunterace can, I mean, if Orange can get the steam that he had in the last game and have such a wide board on turn 4, be ready for that blood loss on turn 5, Hunterace can immediately answer it with a coin into Volcano to stop any of that nuisance happening.
Yeah, but all of that push from the previous game was generated by the fact that he had a Mana Tide that was unable to be answered, where the Shaman has so many tools to answer Mana Tide, unlike Paladin.
You hate to see that happen.
Yeah, you hate to see the patches draw, for sure. If you're an Orange fan out there, you're feeling pretty sad.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, it's a favorable matchup for Hunterace, and it's a favorable hand split here in the opening. Orange's hand is garbage, and Hunterace's hand is fantastic. He's got a good curve, better curve than the aggressive deck, as well as the prime removal option that is the difference maker in the matchup. And insane Jade ramp as well.
Yeah, and it's not a case as well for Orange where he can take this to late game and try and just keep refilling a board and hope for the Devolve to hit an Echo. Because of the Jade generation from Hunterace, it's just going to get too overwhelming for Orange. It's not like the Echo list that we have seen. We've seen some Echo lists this tournament that don't even run the Jade package.
Totem. It's a bit interesting of a play.
Wow.
He doesn't even have a Flame Tongue or any way to buff the totem or a thing from below in his hand that he's discounting the cost of. But he is going to be up a totem, so he's going to have that in the future to buff with Flame Tongues if he finds it. I guess he just doesn't see himself using the coin in future turns. He could have tried to maybe coin out a 2/4 next turn with the Hot Spring Guardian, but...
it does mean he won't have that coin on turn 4 for the Volcano, which is what I was talking about earlier. If Orange were able to build a board now, which, I mean, he can't, but if he were, it does mean the Hunterace wouldn't be able to answer that turn 5 Bloodlust from Orange.
Yeah.
But I guess he had a read that actually he's not played anything yet. I think we're okay. A little giggle as well from Hunterace, because he knows patches is in the hand. Cruel, really. A cruel world we live in. People laughing at other people's misfortune of patches. Happens far too often though, doesn't it? Five-out.
Having patches drawn in your hand, or people laughing at me?
Bit of both.
Yeah. Yeah, having patches in the hand is, they call it a necessary risk. It's just kind of a silly game mechanic.
And Hunterace making the relevant trade as well there so that a Maelstrom Portal won't answer his board easily. Yeah,
I just got ahead early and I was just focusing on trying to stay ahead.
At least Orange does have the Mana Tide totem here, which is...
It's not great as, you know, it walks right into the Jade Lightning turn, but it's the best he's got to try and continue fighting for the board.
I mean, it's not the best tempo play in the world.
No, it's not really a tempo play. It's more of just desperation to try and find stuff. Having double Doppelgangster is not too bad. Now he just needs to find double Evolve and he's good to go.
I guess that's the way he wins, right?
Yeah.
You Doppelgangster Evolve, you bring out a Volcano perhaps, and you just do it again the next turn and hope there isn't too much of an answer.
Hunterace forced to use the Jade Lightning here. Or not. He's just going to develop straight into the Mana Tide. He does not fear additional cards from Orange. He wants an additional 2/3 body and the Jade Lightning to react to something more threatening. So I guess what would be more threatening than the Mana Tide? Potentially big Jade minions coming out of Orange's deck, but that's not going to be happening for a while. I guess just a Flame Tongue Totem or a Primal Fin Totem, having an answer for one of those in case he loses the board. But I don't know. I don't think the 2/3 is really worth that much. You get an extra 2/3, your opponent gets an extra card. It's just a tough call.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he's just saying next turn I'll be able to clear it up with my minions anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Next turn, most of the time, he can clear it up with his minions. So he's trading a little bit of tempo, or trading a little bit of value for a little bit of additional tempo. And the exchange seems to work out fine for him. I'm always afraid to make plays like that against the Evolve Shaman, though, because sometimes all it takes is that one extra card, and then they Doppelgangster Evolve you. But he does have the Volcano in case that happens.
I wonder how often the situation is where the Doppelgangster Evolve puts you above the Volcano range as well. With Divine Shields, I mean, what? So you could get 3 minions of 6 health. That would take you out of range of a Volcano. We have already seen that once today.
You could get 3 Karen Bloodhoofs.
If we see that today, Fiber.
That's a pretty good one. They definitely live through the volcano, kind of.
They definitely do.
Yeah, well, the first halves all die, but they come back with a vengeance. Army of Chill Wind Yetis, 4/5 Bane Bloodhoofs.
Still no evolve found for Orange yet, so that game plan's not even remotely an option so far. But he does still have time to work with. That is one thing against Hunterace's deck. There isn't much pressure coming forward from him. He is very much on the defensive. And waiting for something like an evolved Doppelgangster to happen.
Or just waiting for enough Jade cards that they start getting out of control, but they haven't gotten out of control yet. And that's not a spell power totem. So I imagine Jinyu Water Speaker comes out as it's just a solid body to help contest. It's the most stats you can possibly play this turn, and that seems to be the theme of the game plan here. My deck has more stats than yours, so if we just trade minions on board, I come out ahead. Play my stats every turn.
Flames and Totem is going to help make some trades here. I don't know if I like Devolve. You definitely want to save that Devolve for Echo.
Okay, so with the Evolve, the 3/6 turns into a 3/3. The 2/3 can turn into a 3/3 as well. And the O2 changes into a 1/1.
Yeah.
It's an interesting Devolve, but I don't think it's worth it.
No, I don't like it. I like keeping it for later. Especially the fact you've got the Flame Tongue as well to make some form of trades here.
Right, and the great thing about the Flame Tongue is you get to protect it with the taunt here. So
yeah, you get to turn a bad 1/4 into a potential 3/4 if you had made a trade the other way around.
wow, another taunt as well to help protect it. So now we can see Hunterace really getting rewarded for holding on to that Jade Lightning and developing into the Mana Tide that wasn't protected by a taunt, waiting for the taunts to come out protecting something, and now he has the Jade Lightning if he wants to answer the Flame Tongue totem.
And actually, Orange will be in a decent spot if he can keep building this board that Hunterace may not be able to answer, force out that Volcano when the board is just full of totems, and then get the Doppelgangster into Evolve. But these Jades are starting to grow.
Yeah, the Jades are getting really big really quick. It's going to be kind of difficult for him, but Hunterace is running out of proactive plays, so eventually he's going to lose board control just because his hand is all reactive nonsense that's not very helpful in these situations.
Picking up Rathian was pretty big as well from the Stonehill Defender. It is more draw. Just the one, of course.
Yeah, he needs to find that evolve. He doesn't really have too much game until he finds the evolves, but once he finds both evolves, he's good to go.
There we go.
There's one.
All right then.
Good
Game
progress.
On. Game on. There is still hope for Orange.
Yeah. He just needs to evolve in such a way that beats Volcano. Rathian and Stonehill Defender, by the way, great candidates for evolve.
Yeah, already. I mean, it's when Hunterace is going to be expecting this evolve, to be honest. I guess every turn. You're always worried about it. Jade Lightning helps.
Yeah, that's a sick pickup. Jade Lightning plus the Maelstrom Portal here clears the entire board and you lose nothing. So usually you take those.
He is going to put stuff on the board for Hunterace, though, which will allow him to trade into anything that comes out of Doppelgangster, combined with a Volcano, that it could pretty much be a guaranteed board clear, whatever the outcome.
Well, he's got the 2 hexes just to push the initiative. He just hexes 2 of the 6 drops and he's fine.
Yeah, if it's something crazy like the 2 cans, as you say, those hexes are going to come in handy.
He's holding back the Jade Lightning, just trying to establish the Mana Tide instead. This means he's not looking to play for tempo, he's looking to play for the additional card draw. So now, if the Doppelgangster evolve happens, now he's more likely to trade in Volcano rather than, you know, pushing tempo hexes to try and kill his opponent. So he goes with a more reactive line of play, which kind of makes sense when you're playing the reactive deck. Seems really passive, though.
So 2 options for Orange. You can either just go for the Doppelgangster evolve, or he could play Aya if he wanted to as well, just to try and put some pressure into this board.
Yeah, that is a tough call. Aya Jade Lightning can both be used together next turn, so that might be some reason just to hold on to the Jades for a little bit and then try and do them all at once the following turn.
And let's see what he can get from the evolve then, see if it's going to be anything of significance. Cabal Trafficker, I mean, that's going to help at least put something else into his board. The Ancient Watcher, I mean, that's...
It's a lot of stats to help you play around Volcanoes.
Yeah.
It's actually a fantastic 2-drop, all things considered.
And I mean, an 8-8 in general. Yes, okay, it's an 8-8 that freezes itself after attacking, but still, again, Volcano.
Definitely above average health rolls for orange there.
So there is the option to devolve if Hunterace would like. I mean, of course, they're not going to turn back into 2/2s, but...
They might.
but they will be, yeah, that's true. They might, but they should be significantly worse, statistically wise. But instead, the fact that Hunterace does have the hexes means he can just deal with this board. Thanks to the Jade Lightning as well, or at least the majority of the board, at least.
Yeah, seems... The previous turn, he could have set up a much bigger board by using the Jade Lightning, have an additional 5/5 on the field, and then use the hexes and be able to push damage. No, there's additional 4/4, I'm sorry. I don't know. He is getting some sick value out of this mana type, though. And he has a very good defensive end with Devolved Volcano, but... Yeah, Orange is really starting to outvalue him. Orange is closing the gap here. It's pretty crazy to see. And these Jades are massive for Orange now, too. And the Jade Lightning lines up with just a beautiful target there.
You can summon a 3/3 and a 4/4, take out the 4, hit the opponent 4/4 as well, and then the trade into the Jade Spirit. Suddenly, Hunterace is forced into potentially using Volcano and Devolve, maybe even... You don't want to use double Volcano, that's for sure.
Right, right. But
however, I have seen it happen in the past, in very dire situations.
this is getting pretty dire. Oh, that's a fantastic pickup to be able to develop behind your board clear. You need to kind of pop the Aya, though, and otherwise... Oh, well, no, the Devolve, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Devolve pops it.
Devolve pops the Aya. Yeah. That kind of sucks. Now you have to leave a lot of stats on the board because the taunt stops you from your minions from dying. So it doesn't help with the Volcano clearing things. So now actually the Volcano doesn't full clear because of the taunt. That's a bit unlucky.
And Knuckles is going to get some value as well by just trading and still putting damage to the face.
You might leave up an enraged, raging Worgen.
Which is a pretty scary factor with Bloodlust as a possibility.
And Flame Tongue Totem. So he's going to opt for the second Devolve here.
That's a better situation.
You give your opponent a card draw still, so it's not perfect, but you can clear fully. And it doesn't even look like he has to use the Volcano anymore. The threats are very mild now.
Like a chicken korma.
Like a chicken korma.
Do you know what chicken korma is?
No.
It's a mild curry.
Okay.
Yeah.
So kind of like the DreamHack food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit. Just quite mild. It's not going to upset your stomach.
Right. Just very well-balanced food for
gentle.
everybody.
There's a second Bloodlust. I mean, actually, if Orange just picked up a second Evolve, he would have been in quite a nice spot. Hunterace still does have the backup plan of Volcanoes, though.
Yeah, and Orange only has one remaining threat left, right? It's just Doppelgangster Evolve, and then Hunterace double Volcanoes the second Doppelgangster Evolve, and suddenly Orange is out of stuff, so he needs to...
He's out of stuff, but he can still play things like Primal Fang Totem and just his normal totems, build up a wide board, and then have Bloodlusts.
Yeah, yeah, and then force out a Volcano that way, then get the Doppelgangster Evolve.
Yeah.
So he's fishing here. That's not evolved, but it is a giant Jade minion, so he can build the stats of the board outside the range of Volcano.
So that's what, it's a 5/5 now?
Yeah.
I believe.
So there's 11, and then this makes it go up to 16. You can add Primal Fin, which will add another 4 health. So you really start scaling outside the range of Volcano quite nicely.
And then if Hunterace is forced into a double Volcano, he's suddenly run out of any options. Remember, he's getting what out of his Echo at the moment as well. Like,
yeah, his
he's
deck
got nothing in his hand.
Really out of gas. These Volcanoes feel like there should have been a time earlier on in the game where they could have been played. He kept one of these off the mulligan. Now it's way beyond the 10 mana turns, and, well, maybe not way beyond, but we're just reaching that point, and they still haven't been used. And he's been trading in really awkward ways. Something went wrong here.
Is he going to have to double Volcano here? I guess he can see what dies.
Right. I imagine most likely he doesn't have to. 10, 11, 12, and 6 from each Bloodlusts is 22. All right, no, 24. So he's 2 damage off lethal at the moment, but he's got the thing from below, so you should not have to double Volcano here. You can just play the Gluttonous Ooze. hero power. Probably hold back the thing from below because you don't want it just dying to a 5-1. So you wait until, you know, you've utilized the second volcano cleaning things up. Maybe combo it with a Spirit Echo.
You could Flame Tongue Totem into Bloodlust and just push damage here if you really wanted.
Orange needs to keep building a board, though. And that does not build a board very well. Your Flame Tongue Totem dies for free in that instance. So I don't think he wants to play it unless it's protected, because he has no follow-up to that push. The deck doesn't run like Pyroblast or anything, so you can't really burn people out over the top. You always need board control.
Can Orange afford to take the risk of double gangstering here as well? I don't think he should.
I don't think he should. I think...
But if he considers that there isn't a second volcano in the hand...
Hunterace moused over it last turn a little bit, and it's been there a while. It's possible that you can get a read on it. Yeah. He is going for the push.
Okay, he's pushing damage here and now, and he's saying, well, next turn, I may be able to push enough damage depending on how you trade here.
Right, he needs one 5-attack minion to live, and for there to be no taunt. So if just the Malkazar lives, he can combo it with the Bloodlust for lethal, and if there's a taunt, he can devolve and then Bloodlust with the Malkazar. So the numbers check out. So I originally was not completely on board with this play, but seeing how it pans out, those are some pretty good lines to set right there. When you can produce 8 damage from your hand most of the time and your opponent has 8 health, it's usually the right thing to do.
Yeah, and Hunterace is 100% going to be counting Bloodlust here as well, and he may be forced into a Volcano. Alternatively, could just trade in the Ooze into the Flame Tongue, kill off a 7-1 trade that will be a 5-1 Jade, and then play a thing from below, but that's still risky as well. So the Volcano seems the safest option. I think you follow it up with both, both Mana Tide and the thing from below as well.
That's a much welcome sight.
Very
Big Jade minions to help him develop the board. Orange is relatively out of steam at the moment. He's got one big final push now. He's seen all of the AoE from Hunterace. He's seen both of the volcanoes. He's seen one Maelstrom Portal. There's still one remaining that can combo with a spell-powered totem to ruin his day. But other than that, he's got a good shot of being able to take this. I like not devolving, though, because you don't know if your opponent's going to play another taunt, and you would give the Mana Tide attack power when it currently has no attack power. So it can't contest any of these minions. So you just play the Firefly now, play the Flame Elemental, play the Totem, set up to devolve Bloodlust for the final push. And Hunterace does not have the ability to trade into all these minions.
And a Taunt Totem as well makes it even more
He picks up another taunt, but it's going to be down to the devolve here.
So he's thinking the Bloodlust is there.
Yeah, so if Bloodlust is there, then a 5 and a 4 goes into the taunts evenly. Orange is left with 10 plus 4, 14 additional damage, which is enough to kill him.
Yeah, you don't even need to devolve.
So a taunt totem is required. That's what he's kind of counting for, is if there's a Bloodlust, do I need a taunt totem? And the answer to that question is yes. So now he's thinking, well, maybe I just can't beat Bloodlust anyway. I'm not even favored to get the totem, so if I'm going to actually win this game, maybe I need to just fight for the board and actually get on it. So he's going to risk the idea that there is no Bloodlust there. And there's a Bloodlust.
There is a Bloodlust.
Bloodlust is lethal here. Orange can push 14 damage to the face.
Doesn't even need to risk the devolve in this situation, and a somewhat unfavorable matchup, potentially forced out all of the removal from Hunterace and then was able to get a decent evolved doppelgangster as well. Orange is going to be the man progressing to the semi-finals. He's going to be joining the likes of Espimito and Zixo there. A great performance from him.
Well, it's another veteran of the scene advancing to the semi-finals. I guess fans of the players will be happy.
Sure, yeah. A lot of people showing some consistent results now. Orange, time and time again, been performing well, joining Zixo, who's also been time and time again performing well. Maybe there is some skill in this game.
Yeah, maybe it is. But what's even better is that Orange is one of those players who actually is very honest on his social medias, right? When he's going into a tournament and he's not really that well prepared, he will be like, yeah, you know what, I didn't have time, I dropped the ball or something, and he says like, I didn't prepare well, so I don't assume I will do well. But this time, he actually said he was preparing a lot. He was taking time off streaming, he was just sitting there, talking with his teammates, preparing the lineup, and he made it. He is now in the semifinals of the DreamHack Grand Prix, which is a fantastic result so far. When it comes to Hunterace, though, what we can tell about his appearance here, Gaskin?
I mean, he'll be very happy to get top 8 at least. As a 16-year-old coming into Hearthstone, he's got a very bright future ahead of him. He had some fantastic plays. He played everything extremely well. His deck choices were good. We even thought he was going to take the series, to be honest. There will be some frustration, the fact that he wasn't able to take the series. Everyone is, of course, initially going to kind of drop their heads a little bit. But if he thinks about where he came and where he finished, he should be overall very happy.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, when you're on a huge stage like this one, you're being watched by thousands of people, you might play a little bit too passive. Also, something that you are actually a very big fan of is just being an aggressive controlled player, right?
Right. I think control decks often... people play them in such a passive fashion, and there's opportunities where they can kind of switch on the gas, especially in that last game, the Shaman Mirror, where Orange had a really weak opening. I feel like he could have maybe cut down on Orange's time, not given him the ability to draw into those Doppelgangster Evolves and set up those wide boards by pushing his early game advantage. Like, control decks aren't normally designed to really do that well, but when you got the ability to make a wide board and then follow up with double hex, allowing you to push through threats, that's an opportunity where you can seize that tempo and turn it into a lethal, and then your opponent doesn't have time to get a wide board set up for Bloodlust.
Yeah, exactly. That's something I really liked what you said when he had that double hex in hand with the Volcano. That was the moment to decide, what position am I in this matchup? Am I the guy who's actually pushing the pressure, or am I the guy that answers the pressure? And he was like still in the defensive stance. And that could have cost him the game. There's a lot of intricate decisions in Hearthstone that you can just rewind and say, maybe here that was my mistake. Maybe this is why I lost the game, and this is maybe something I should learn from. And I hope Hunterace will take this match as a lesson for himself to be a better player in the future.
Oh, he'll certainly watch that back time and time again. I mean, not just it was his moment on the big stage, but he'll say, where did I go wrong? Potentially not killing that Manatide totem. Remember, he had the option of taking that away.
That ended up working out really well for him, though. That was one of the plays that he made where I was like, wow, this guy knows what he's doing. I liked that. So I thought it was better the way he did that than the way I had suggested, actually.
It did allow more card draw, but yeah, as you're right, he just got more tempo onto the board.
Well, and he got to save the Jade Lightning to answer the Flame Tongue that was hidden behind the taunts, which ended up being fantastic for him.
Yeah, exactly. He'll look back at both the positives and the negatives and see where he can progress as a Hearthstone player by watching it.
Definitely correct. I mean, he's still a top 8 player at DreamHack Grand Prix here at DreamHack Summer in Jönköping, so that's definitely a point in his CV. But now let's take a look at the standings right now. How does they look? Espomido and 6 already waiting, and they will still wait because Orange will meet his opponent after this next match will be Seiko versus Zump. We don't know much about those players, so I'm not gonna interview you guys here because those are the new faces in this tournament. There always will be, that's actually a super plus in those open tournaments with 200 players. In the top 16, 8 or whatever, there will always be at least one player that is not really well known, and that is his chance. We had many names in the past that were actually doing that, right?
And Psycho did go 8-1 yesterday in Swiss as well. I had a little chat with him. I had an interview with him. He seemed fairly confident about his lineup going into the last 16. So perhaps he can push on, make it to the semi-finals, maybe even the final. Who knows? It would be a great underdog story to see someone rise through the ranks like that. A very good young German player.
Yeah, and it's just super cool to see the top 4 being a spread of 2 really well-known players with Orange and Zixo, and 2, not as well-known players with Espinado and then whoever, joins him.
Exactly. And will be that will be the result of the next match, which will be set up in just a few minutes. But before that happens, we have a small short video with Zump. Enjoy that, and after that will be the game.
I'm Champ, I'm from Finland, I'm living near Helsinki.